Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Here's what I'd like to do right out of the gate. Almost without an introduction or setting this up in any way, I have a clip that I want to play, oddly enough, from the Glenn Beck program. Now, as you've heard me say before, I don't listen to his show, but I have heard it enough to know that he's basically a walking contradiction and essentially a gatekeeper, and that's putting it mildly. He's a Freemason, he's a Mormon, and a number of other things, and frankly, I don't think he can be trusted. Again, he's a gatekeeper. He also has a number of guests on his show from time to time to promote things that he, of course, agrees with. Ironically enough, just the other day, again, in my sort of typical fashion, I was about to exercise, and I thought to myself, okay, I can listen to music as I typically do, or I'll just tune in very quickly and hear what Glenn Beck is talking about and what asinine thing he's bringing up these days. And I'm glad that I caught this. I don't think it was an accident, because this is a rabbit hole, and this is a big one, and it's important. And I listened to the entire interview that he had with this individual who goes by the name Justin Haskins, Haskins. And he is in league with Glenn Beck on a very specific issue. I'm not going to introduce it. I'm going to let the two of them bring this up and talk about what it is that they are promoting and what it is that they are doing. I think we're going to agree on this. Certainly, if you're listening to this show, you're probably going to agree with my take on this, and I have a take. So this lasts, I want to say, maybe 10 minutes. Give it a listen, and when it's over with, I'm going to come back in the end and get more descriptive and describe what I think this is and what this means. So give this here a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Justin Haskins, a great friend of the program, great friend to Liberty, and the co-author of The Great Reset and Dark Future. Hello, Justin. How are you?
I'm doing well, Glenn. How are you?
I'm good. So you have been working with Mercury One on something for a while now, and I'm really excited that we can announce it today. So have at it.
Yeah. I am so excited for this program. This is something that I have been dreaming about for many years. Going back to when we first started looking at the Great Reset and Davos and all of the things that the World Economic Forum had been up to, one of the things that we learned about was something called the Young Global Leaders Program. This is a program that the World Economic Forum has had in place for 3 decades, where they've created a pipeline of young leaders to go into the public policy field, into journalism, into business, all embedded with the Davos ideology. So these are the cream of the crop people in business, government, et cetera, all over the world. Justin Trudeau, Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, people in the Biden administration, cabinet level people have all gone through this program. And we don't have anything like this on the right. We don't have any of the good guys doing something like this. And so I came up with this idea and pitched it to Mercury One to create a program that we're calling the Freedom Rising Fellowship Program, where we're going to train the best and brightest young people, aged 21 to 35, to create this pipeline into journalism, into business, into public policy, especially in think tanks and government, so that people are embedded with the values of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, that those people are going to be the next generation of American leaders that are going to fight back against the Davos agenda. And so that's the program that we're launching with Mercury One. Our very first session is starting in June. We're in the recruiting process right now. This is the first time we're speaking about this publicly. It's going to be for a 4-month period. You're going to have to work your butt off. Okay, because I'm gonna work you like crazy if you want to be in this program. You're going to be working closely with me and my team, and we're going to teach you how to do everything from speak on radio and television to writing op-eds for major print publications, to informing lawmakers about new legislation, and most importantly, to discover the new issues, the emerging issues that no one has ever heard of, like the Great Reset and ESG and things like that, so that you can have a real impact on society. So if you want to save the country, this is an opportunity to do that. If you're interested, you can go to justinhaskins.com. Later in the week, you'll be able to go to mercury1.org and find more information about that. And if you go to justinhaskins.com right now, you can see all the information about the program and how to apply.
So, Justin, I know you're going to be teaching, how to speak on the radio, and you're going to have journalism, experts there to teach journalism. And I've noticed that I'm just looking down at my calendar. There's not a single thing on my calendar all summer long. This is
really awkward.
It's very awkward. Yes, very awkward.
Yeah. Well, Glenn, you're always invited.
I know. Yeah, sure.
For you, Glenn.
In my own building. That's good. Thank you. Let me ask you this, Justin. Are these new fellows, are they going to have access to the entire library of Mercury One and Wall Builders?
Yeah, absolutely. And not only are they going to have access to it, they're going to be working. They're essentially going to be part of my team. They're going to be working on a day-to-day basis on new and emerging issues, on doing research, on getting that research to public policymakers, on getting that information to the public. So this isn't just a training program. This is like a job almost. I mean, that's a huge commitment to take on. But if you're willing to do it, you're going to be part of something really special. And then after the program is over, we're going to create this for this 1 4-month session. We're going to do many of these going forward. You're going to become part of a network of young people, just like the WEF's Young Global Leaders Program, so that you can help each other going forward for the rest of your career. So that's really the vision that I have for building this out over the long.
So it's like Yale's Skull and Bones without the evil.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good. All right, good.
Yeah, you get it.
So, what are you looking for in people? 21 to 34 years old, or 35 years old. What are you looking for?
So the biggest thing is, if you have a passion for public policy, you need to be able to communicate, especially write and do research. But the biggest thing is that passion for public policy. You need to be interested in doing detailed investigation, in poring through boring old documents to find something that's really important, poring through video footage and podcasts and all of that stuff, all the things that you and I and our research team have been doing for years and years and years. It takes a lot of hard work. It isn't easy. These things, but if you have that passion for it, that's going to be the most important thing. We can teach you a lot of the other skills, but we can't teach the passion. So you got to want to be willing to devote yourself to this for the rest of your career. So if this isn't something that you're interested in going into for your whole career, and you just think this might be an interesting thing to do for a summer or whatever, this is not going to be the program for you.
And we do have programs for people like that just they want to know the truth about America or her history, but don't necessarily, are not necessarily looking to make their whole life about, Washington or policies or something like that. And we have a program that is separate at Mercury One from this. This is for a fellowship. And I tell you, I have people in Washington all the time that ask for briefings on the things that we do know here at the show, and you will have access to some very high ranking people. If you are the hard workers, you're the ones that are discovering and putting it all together and briefing not only people like me, but also people in Washington. It's a great start.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We're going to ask that people sign a confidentiality agreement when they join the program, because you're going to see a lot of really important information. You're going to see things that lawmakers are saying. You're going to have access to research that nobody has access to, and so we're really inviting you in to the club.
How are you going to make sure? I mean, I know we do vetting for our summer program for college students, and so far I think we've only had one person that we were like, okay, you need to go. But how are you? What questions are you asking? What should people expect?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be so the application itself is pretty simple and straightforward. But after we've identified sort of the most promising candidates, we're going to have long, detailed conversations with you, and I assure you, we will know for sure if you are if you share our values or if you don't share our values. I don't think that that's going to be too much of a problem because of how detailed those conversations are going to be, multiple stages of interviews and things like that. Because we really do want the most dedicated, the best, the brightest, and the people who share our ideological values.
It's fantastic. Again, you can go later to mercury1.org. They were a little busy with the tornadoes today, which, by the way, we have a goal of raising $50,000 just for the tornadoes today. If you want to donate, please donate. We've got people on the ground already, but we need some extra help because it's 3 states. So if you want to donate, go to mercury1.org, and that's where you'll find the information about this new fellowship for a new generation of leaders. We want to really up our game on this and be able to help train the future leaders of tomorrow. And so Justin and Mercury One have put together Freedom Rising Fellowship, the Freedom Rising Fellowship program. And you can get all the information at justinhaskins.com. Is that right?
Yep, justinhaskins.com. And you can also email fellowship@mercury1.org right now. You can email that if you're interested in applying, and we'll make sure you have everything that you need.
Right. We'll need a resume, 2 writing samples, brief statement explaining why you're interested in joining the program. That'll be the first hurdle. And just go to fellowship@mercury1.org. Send us everything, and we'll be in touch.
Okay, let's go through this one step at a time here. First of all, when I first heard that, my initial impression, almost immediately as he started to talk about this, was this is a bad thing. I tried to keep an open mind throughout, but every red flag and every red buoy in the water was just not good. The words that he used, the comparisons that he made. This is a perfect example of how the so-called right, in the fake political construct that exists, pretends as if they have a counter to the ongoing problem that has existed for quite some time. Of course, he referenced the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leaders. This, of course, is where we got Tulsi Gabbard, and this is where you get Vivek Ramaswamy, Ramalama Ding Dong, and this is where you get all those people. This is where you get the CNN hosts, the young CNN hosts. This is where you get workers that recruit children for child trafficking in the UN. This is how it gets started. It's groups like that. Now, this Justin Haskins guy, I'm just going to say this at face value just so that you can visualize what it is that I'm looking at here, and you can see it for yourself. And yes, I understand some people would say, Sean, that's bigoted, how dare you? But looks matter, and motivations matter, and I'm more interested in his motivations, which I think are beyond suspicious. First of all, by looking at him, he looks Jewish to me, okay? Now put that aside for a minute. With that aside, he's not bringing up anything that's either new nor good, because he even uses, again, numerous words that are giant red flags, like pipeline, think tank. He used the term, we're trying to find our best and brightest. That phrase, the best and brightest, as if you don't apply for this think tank and this quote-unquote pipeline, then you're not the best and the brightest. That's the implication. And then, of course, it gets even more nefarious when he starts to talk about how there's a giant vetting process, multiple interviews. It's evident you're not going to be compensated for your time. This is obviously a month-long internship where you're going to be working for these individuals for nothing. They're going to have you be doing apparently a great deal of research and scouring the internet for particular things, and then bring them ideas so that they can all agree on what to talk about and what to do and how to develop these individuals. It's essentially a media-driven fraternity or sorority. And then he openly says at the end of the 4 months, you don't get a job, but all we do is we will support you in potentially finding employment, and you will support one another because you will have participated in the same thing with one another. Again, no individuality. It's just straight up collaboration all of the time. And he openly said it too. If you don't agree with our ideologies, then you're not going to be a good fit. Which means you'd better know that that's going to reach a particular threshold, and there will be a line in the sand that they will either want you to cross or not want to cross when it comes to particular subjects. Then he also said, of course, there's a borderline non-disclosure agreement or a confidentiality agreement, and his justification for that is because you'll be talking with elected officials about whatever. You're not going to be talking about confidential information. You're going to be talking about particular things that they don't want you to talk about if you don't end up staying there. So none of this is good. But I want to remind people of something too, that this kind of a program is exactly where you end up with the likes of a Charlie Kirk or a Candace Owens or even elected officials like a Lauren Boebert. As I've brought up on the show before, some of those individuals were actual employees or agents or clients rather within a Jewish-run talent agency where they're taking borderline pornographic pictures of themselves, or people are taking the pictures for them. And then they are associated with this talent agency, and then before you know it, they're placed in particular positions across the country, and then wouldn't you know it, they end up getting elected. Because they feed, the whatever you would call it, the stereotypical right-wing base with the most general sort of aspects or characteristics of these people that you would think that everybody would just randomly want, and then all of the sudden people end up voting for them. Again, I'm going to bring you back to when Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example, was first elected. She was first elected, and every single ad that she had was her standing in a field holding a gun. It was just her holding an AR-15, and then you'd get those random emails in your inbox that would say, hey, Marjorie Taylor Greene is running for Congress for the first time ever in this district, and she's giving away a free AR-15. If you want a free rifle, all you have to do is register and make a little donation, and you'll be in the running for a free gun. It's things like that. Again, it's not that they're tugging on heartstrings per se, they're feeding the most brainwashed of the individuals into believing that just because she's holding a gun that she must be morally sound or constitutionally sound. That's what this so-called Mercury One think tank is, this Freedom Rising program, or pipeline, as this Justin Haskins calls it. Frankly, again, this isn't any different than a World Economic Forum. It's the same kind of entity. Yes, it might highlight what the World Economic Forum is doing, but are they going to be actually creating any solutions to anything? The answer is no. And is it going to be some kind of a real pipeline into politics or even the media? Maybe. It's basically like America's Got Talent or American Idol. Where are all of those winners these days? Has anyone ever noticed that on those shows, for example, you never actually find out where these people end up? You just won American Idol. Congratulations. You're going to be just like Carrie Underwood. There's never been anybody else like Carrie Underwood in the history of that show. Nobody. No one's made more money than her. My point is that this kind of a pipeline isn't really designed to give these people any kind of a career. It's designed to waste their time. It's designed for Mercury One to get work done without having to pay for it. It's also designed, again, to brainwash these individuals and get them to be more conformist than they already are. Again, the kind of person who would apply for something like this would be a conformist. Because as they openly state, and as he openly said in this, if you don't fit their ideologies, then they're going to ask you to leave. Then you're not going to make it to the end of the program, and they're not going to help you afterwards, which means it's quite possible you'll be wasting even more of your own time. Now, when you bounce over to Justin Haskins' website, justinhaskins.com, he has this description right on his website, Mercury 1 Fellowship Program. This is, again, it's just beyond suspicious to me. And you also, by the way, I should mention this, you heard he and Glenn Beck laughing about Skull and Bones. Isn't that funny? Well, it's like Skull and Bones, but without the evil. And then Haskins started laughing and was like, yeah, you know all about that. And he was like, ha, ha, ha. Well, why would Glenn Beck know about Skull and Bones? I'm not saying you have to be associated with it to know about it. We know about Skull and Bones, but at the exact same time, he's a Mormon. He's a Freemason. Skull and Bones, again, there's images of Glenn Beck with a Skull and Bones shirt on. And all of that is Jewish, as it turns out. It's not an accident. Mormonism, Freemason, Skull and Bones, it's all Jewish. One last thing before I get into actually what's on Justin Haskins' website. This is absolutely hilarious. And it's a little sidebar here because it's going to lead into the next thing I'm going to bring up. But Glenn Beck is a literal walking contradiction. Again, I tuned in just very quickly the other day, too. It was after this particular episode, but he openly stated that people need to read the Quran, and he was actually quoting Thomas Jefferson. He said, if people want to understand how odd this religion of theirs is in the Middle East and how strange it is, he said, read the Quran and then you'll really know. Well, see, isn't that interesting coming out of the mouth of Glenn Beck? Because Glenn Beck agrees with that philosophy, yet he won't read the Torah and he won't read the Talmud. In fact, if you were to probably question Glenn Beck about that, he would get his panties in a bunch and he wouldn't know what to do. He'd get all nervous and say, well, I have, and anyway, next subject, and then he would move on. He probably wouldn't even listen to an explanation of both of those texts that were summarized by somebody else who had read them. He wouldn't even want to sit and listen to that. So, that's the larger umbrella point, is that Glenn Beck is a walking contradiction, and he doesn't seem to think that we can pick up on that relatively easily. So anyway, over on justinhaskins.com, again, Mercury 1 Fellowship Program, it says the following, quote, the United States is facing unprecedented challenges both at home and abroad. Now listen to this description, because this is funny. He says, quote, many of the world's most powerful corporations, financial institutions, Wall Street Goliaths, colleges and universities, and nonprofit organizations are now working hand in hand with government to limit freedoms and fundamentally transform our society. Well, it's always been that way. Certainly in modern times, certainly since the 1800s, and basically the elimination of the Constitution by and large. So this isn't new. This is him trying to profit off of kicking the can down the road. He's basically an extension of the Heritage Foundation and other NGOs like it, if not IGOs, also international non-government organizations or international government organizations. He's a leaf on the branch on the trunk of the larger problem. He's just on the other side of the tree, so he wants people to believe. But he's still on the profit side, you see? He's interested in profiting from this on his own and bringing Mercury 1 as a company more money than it already has. By, again, outsourcing their legwork, so to speak. And, of course, brainwashing in a completely different section of youth that already exists. But it goes on and it says, just as troubling, foreign adversaries are working tirelessly to sow division and discord in our already highly divided nation. Now, who would that be? Long pause. Who do you think he just described with the Powerful corporations, Wall Street Goliaths, colleges and universities, nonprofit organizations, limiting freedom, transforming society, and sowing division and discord. Who could that possibly be from a historic standpoint? Kicked out of 109 countries 1,030 times. It goes on, it says America is facing incredibly difficult challenges, and the rapid development of emerging technologies will make those problems even more difficult in the years ahead. Artificial intelligence, automation, advanced algorithms, and deep fakes will undermine people's understanding of the truth and create massive amounts of economic and social disruption. If our country doesn't change course soon, we won't survive. Again, who is ultimately behind economic and social disruption? Who's responsible for that? You have to remember, again, the octopus has multiple tentacles, and the reason that the octopus is the metaphor for the Jewish lobby and all of its controllers is because, metaphorically and literally, there are suction cups on the bottoms of the tentacles that are different sizes, but they're still on the same tentacles themselves. He's just one of the suction cups. So is Glenn Beck, whether he wants to know it or not. It goes on, it says, America's best and perhaps only hope is that a new generation of young leaders in business, academia, journalism, finance, and public policy will rise to meet the challenges of this remarkable time. We don't need more Charlie Kirks in the world. He's close-minded and he's a fool, and he came out of nowhere. He came from a grooming program just like this one. He never had a job before he magically found his way on a stage, standing at a lectern with a microphone in front of him, with rooms filled with people willing to listen to him fast talk his way through political discourse as all the videos indicate. He also gets challenged on a constant basis and then gets very defensive. We don't need more people like him. And we also don't want to perpetuate the likes of Fox News with more Jesse Waters kind of people. We don't need that either. That doesn't help. It goes on here. It says it's not enough that young people be devoted to the cause of liberty. They must also know how to uncover the truth about the institutions seeking to undermine freedom, convey important information to the public and decision makers, and turn largely unknown yet important issues into headline-grabbing news stories that have the potential to change history. I call bullshit on that. There's no way that he really wants that. There's no way that they want that. That's a selling line. It's a tagline. Sounds nice, but we all know it. You know it. Again, all of us who are awake fully understand this. If you start asking particular questions and you dive into real history, real world history, from the inception of the world all the way to now, you're going to arrive at the same answers. And those answers are not the ones that the Justin Haskins of the world want to hear. They just don't. Glenn Beck doesn't want to hear it either. Mercury 1 definitely doesn't want to hear it. The higher up that chain of control and those moneylenders you go, the less likely they are to want to hear it. They just flat out won't talk to you anymore. They'll call you one day in the middle of this intern program because you've discovered that down the rabbit hole there's a Jewish lobby that pays for everything and controls the narrative. And if you bring that up in a board meeting, well, you're toast. You're finished. I don't think it's going to work out here. I don't think this is a good fit for you. That'll be the line that they use. We appreciate the time and effort you've put in, but I just don't think that this is a good fit. I mean, honest to God. It's a brainwashing program. It is a literal pipeline. And what's one of the things that always exists inside of a pipe? Scum. It's just scum. Scum always builds up in a pipe. And that's what this is. This is perpetuating that scum. And unfortunately, and this is the unfortunate part, they're using younger-minded individuals who frankly wouldn't know any better. Again, you're talking about 21 to 35-year-olds. So the closer you get to 30, you're talking about individuals who are either wanting to change their career or individuals who have already been shut out of multiple businesses for very nefarious reasons, most certainly. Not because they necessarily did anything wrong, but because they saw their employers doing things that are terrible. But then you have the 21-year-olds who are fresh out of college, and they're going, oh, an intern on, how to be on the radio and how to talk and how to do this. Yes, they're always going to be looking for the more conservative-minded, quote-unquote, individual. They're not going to hire a leftist. But what they're also not going to do is they're not going to hire someone who questions the much larger picture. They're most certainly not going to hire those people. It goes on here, it says Mercury 1 is not standing idly by. In June, it's launching a revolutionary new program called the Freedom Rising Fellowship, which will provide a select group of highly talented young Americans the tools they need to become influential world changers. Over the course of a 4-month term, fellows will learn to, 4 bullet points, discover new and emerging issues in public policy, economics, business, and culture. But who's going to be teaching them that? Is that going to be any different than, say, their college education? Are they going to come here thinking that it's going to be any different? It's still going to be gatekeeping information. They're not going to tell them the truth. The second bullet point is inform the public through major print and digital publications. So they'll contribute to websites and a number of other things. The next one is convey important information on television, podcasts, and radio, which means, again, here's where you get your Fox News contributor. Fox News contributor so-and-so has more on this story to bring us, so what do you say, so-and-so? And then they just provide their little story. Maybe they become a writer in some local news station. Again, it is a pipeline. It's a pipeline of continuing the propaganda, the specific evil propaganda that exists, that seeks to gatekeep and not keep people fully aware of the real deep-seated problem. The last one is educate state and federal lawmakers about important topics facing the nation. Ladies and gentlemen, they're not going to have a 21-year-old do that. Not unless the 21-year-old is a very attractive female who's sent to a particular office in order to be a sexual favor for somebody, in order to get some inside information. Again, I just don't think this is professional in the slightest. This is way too suspicious. It says the Mercury 1 Fellowship Program is staffed by a team of experts, I'm sure they are, in writing, media, journalism, research, and public policy from the Heartland Institute, another NGO, and it's led by New York Times best-selling author Justin Haskins. It says over a 4-month period, fellows will work with Haskins and his team on groundbreaking research and far-reaching public policy issues. They will learn to discover new topics of importance, write op-eds for public consumption, Substack pages, whatever else, a blog, their own website, convey information on television and radio, and produce informational publications used by lawmakers. No, they won't. Lawmakers aren't going to read anything that they have to say. It's going to be irrelevant by and large. The program is highly selective and will only accept 3 to 4 new members for the summer 2024 term. 3 to 4 people. They make it sound like it's going to be this huge room of people. They're only looking for 3 to 4 people. Oh my God. It's amazing. They're trying to groom the next Charlie Kirk. That's what this whole thing is. It says those interested should apply and should review the information below and then submit an application to fellowship@mercury1.org prior to the upcoming term deadline. The application deadline for the upcoming summer 2024 term is May 13th. Here's the important information for applicants, and then it wraps up. Numerous bullet points. The first one, the summer 2024 term will begin in June. The specific start time will be determined at a later date. It's all confidential. The age limit for fellows is 21 to 35 years old. 3 to 4 fellows will be selected for the summer 2024 term. Why only 3 to 4 people? That sounds like it's just an interview process to staff your building. It says the term will last for 4 months from mid-June to mid-October. Fellows will be expected to work for 20 hours per week. They will be required to travel for at least 2 in-person meetings, and they are expected to cover their own travel costs. In-person meetings will occur in Texas and Chicago. You're not paid anything. You're not paid anything. In fact, I would go so far as to say they already know who the 3 to 4 people are. They already have them picked. This is all just a show. It's a charade. It says fellows will meet remotely at least once each week with program staff and will be expected to communicate via text and email frequently. And then finally it says the Mercury 1 Freedom Rising Fellowship is provided to fellows at no cost, and fellows do not receive monetary compensation. So you're a slave. You're an intern. You're an ideological slave. Agree with them or else you won't get accepted, and there's no promises that anything will happen after the 4-month period of you working for them for nothing. Those who are interested in applying for the summer 2024 term should send a resume or CV, 2 writing samples, and a brief statement explaining their interest for joining the program to fellowship@mercury1.org. Application date is May 13th of this year. Unquote. This is not good. Things like this, though, happen all over the United States. They take something like the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leaders program. They claim it's the exact opposite. We care about the Constitution. We care about America and freedom and blah, blah, blah. And they tell them all those buzzwords to get them all riled up. And then they get a bunch of applicants, and then they only pick 3 to 4 people. There will probably be hundreds of individuals who apply for this, if not thousands, and they're only going to pick 3 to 4. They already, like I said, they already have them picked. This is a recruiting program for something else. It's not good. And like I said throughout, we don't need more Charlie Kirks. We don't need more Ben Shapiros. We don't need more Glenn Becks. And we certainly don't need more Justin Haskins. Again, if these individuals who apply for this and get accepted, if they're really going to be educated, I'm using huge finger quotes here, if they're really going to be educated in all of this, in current trends and history and news and the truth and so on and so forth, the only question you have to ask in one of those meetings is the following: who created socialism? Who created communism? Who created Bolshevism? Who created Marxism? The answer is the same. It's the same throughout. And again, as an accurate history lesson, and this is worth bringing up, in Germany in the 1930s, the reason that Adolf Hitler combined the terms nationalism and socialism was because he wanted to recruit individuals in the country who were originally, so they thought, socialists. But he specifically was a nationalist, which meant he loved his country. He was a Christian who loved his country. That's what that means. Love of country, nationalism. So it was the use of positive propaganda in order to recruit individuals to get them to see the nationalistic side of things. That's why they called it nationalist or National Socialism. That was the whole point. Again, anybody can read this. It's in Mein Kampf. It's in other numerous books. It's in his speeches. He openly stated this on a consistent basis. That's why, again, he used the colors on the flags that he did, because he was interested in recruiting these individuals, because they needed the numbers. They needed to educate and unbrainwash individuals to get them to understand that there's a difference between the National Socialism of Germany and those that actually created socialism, which were the Bolsheviks, which happened to be Jewish. See, Justin Haskins isn't going to answer that question. Again, you ask him who created communism, he'll come up with something stupid like, oh, I don't know, Castro. It was Stalin. It was probably Stalin. Yeah, he was the one. Okay, well, who was Stalin then? And who came before Stalin? Was he really the one who created it? Or is it in their textbooks? Is it in their religious writing? Again, these are the questions that they're not going to want anybody to ask. This is not a question asking recruitment thing. That's not what it is. They even said it a million times. They said it over and over again. We have a large vetting process and multiple interviews, and trust me, we're going to dive deep into you and figure out if you're really the person that we want here and blah, blah, blah. They're going to look up everybody's history on the internet. They're going to dive into everything that they have, and if they come across a singular thing that they don't like, they'll either axe you right then and there, or they'll ask you about it in some private confidential meeting where you're not allowed to talk about anything. Red flags galore, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, just wanted to bring that to your attention and let you know that that's part of this civil war. That's part of this underground civil war that's consistently taking place that is a massive problem, and most people are completely unaware. Again, Charlie Kirk, where'd you come from? James O'Keefe, where'd you come from? Where'd these people come from? Well, as it turns out, James O'Keefe, and this is actually sent to me on Gab, I'm transitioning here slightly, but James O'Keefe worked hand in hand with Andrew Breitbart. These guys were chums. Now, Andrew Breitbart also worked hand in hand with Benjamin Netanyahu. And Breitbart as a publication is Jewish. Now, here's where Andrew Breitbart's death, in my opinion, becomes, frankly, a bit obvious to me. I think he was killed. He, of course, had a heart attack, quote unquote, after having a couple of beers at some bar, on his way to a bar or whatever it was, and then he passed out on the street and he died. He was most likely poisoned. But why? Even though that he was, of course, shaking hands with the likes of Benjamin Netanyahu and taking trips to Israel. Well, he just was asking too many questions at one point. He was cutting a little too close to the surface. And his controllers and the people who were helping fund him probably knew this, and they knew that the more he dug, things would end up right back into Israel, the way that they typically do, if not right back into Benjamin Netanyahu's lap. Because what was Andrew Breitbart doing before his death? He was going to conferences and he was calling out John Podesta as being a pedophile. Which is true. There's more than ample evidence to point that that's the case. But they just didn't want Andrew Breitbart asking any more questions. And he was cutting a little too close for them. He was flying a little too close to the sun. They didn't want things to get back, and they certainly didn't want Andrew Breitbart getting back and going, oh my God, Israel and their government has been in charge of and working with a massive group of individuals who traffic and torture children. Hence, Jeffrey Epstein and his ilk. So they offed him. But who remains? James O'Keefe. So here's what the Post said. It says, O'Keefe got his start under Breitbart, who was a Jew-loving Zionist. Breitbart, O'Keefe, Gateway Pundit, all part of a circle of Netanyahu-approved journalists, quote unquote, allowed to go after anything as long as their journalism does not look at the underlying Jew problem and cheerleaders for Israel, unquote. Correct. That's 100% accurate. And you can pick up on this by just bouncing over to the Gateway Pundit and looking at the contradictions in their own headlines and their own stories. It's amazing. There was also this post specifically regarding the college and university protests, which is where I'm headed now. But this was from the Sharon Collective, or at Shy Ryan, I don't know, org on X, and they said the following: breaking, Operation Global Insight, no more words. Join the Chiron Collective's first undercover operation, become an agent embedded behind enemy, quote-unquote, lines at this weekend's protests, quote-unquote, marking our first global operation that combines the efforts of volunteers and our more seasoned internal team. We are looking for, and then here's what it says, individuals who can maintain cool, calm, and collected demeanors under triggering Jew hate and pressure. The next checkmark says volunteers willing to wear kaiphas and walk in these demonstrations masked. Number 3, individuals with Arabic-sounding names and Middle Eastern appearance may be uniquely positioned for deeper infiltration and will receive cash compensation for their vital role in our operation. It goes on, it says individuals, here we go, key locations. Dublin, Ireland, Sydney, Australia, Toronto, Canada, New York City, New York, San Diego, USA, London, England, and Washington, D.C., USA. Then it says, why volunteer? Engage in a unique global initiative to uphold Western values and safeguard Israel and the Jewish people. Learn new skills in disguise, documentation, and discreet intelligence gathering. Translation: they're hiring individuals, the Jewish lobby is hiring individuals and throwing them in the middle of these protests, pretending to be Palestinians or Palestinian supporters when in fact they are not. This is so multidimensional that the likes of the Gateway Pundit don't even want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. You have endless individuals in these college and university protests who are not students. They are not faculty members. They are individuals who are Jewish and are sympathetic and honestly sympathetic toward Palestinians being genocided, without a doubt. You have individuals who are of Middle Eastern descent who are honestly sympathetic with Palestinians being genocided. So you have this honest component from both sides, but you also have this uninformed component also on both sides, and then you have this dishonest, coordinated underbelly that is clearly being funded by anybody who happens to have money. And again, the presidents of most of these universities happen to be Jewish, and they're relatively staying quiet for the most part because, again, they're trying to profit from this, either through alum donations or whatever it may be. But the Columbia University president is Egyptian, as it turns out, and as you would expect, as I said in the last episode, they're consistently calling for his resignation. In fact, he put out a statement just the other day. This is from, the president, Minshew Shafiq, if that's his real name. It says, quote, since Wednesday, a small group of academic leaders has been in constructive dialogue with student organizers to find a path that would result in the dismantling of the encampment and adherence to university policies going forward. Regretfully, we were not able to come to an agreement. So, again, who's running the place? Who's running these places? And I'm going to finish his statement, but there's ample footage now, ladies and gentlemen, of Antifa being there, dressed as Palestinians, head to toe wearing black, face covered, the whole thing. You get a Palestinian scarf around your neck, and all of a sudden you're a Palestinian. But they're going in these buildings with hammers. They're breaking the windows. They're vandalizing the buildings. I think it's hilarious. I mean, that's just me. You want to burn your own building down and burn these buildings down even when these individuals who are doing the vandalizing don't even go to those schools? I say do it. Go for it. Burn the whole thing to the ground. I don't care. But what the Gateway Pundit isn't going to do is they're not going to tell you that that it really is Antifa. They're not going to say that. No one's vetting these people. No one's looking into their past, finding out their names, let alone arresting them. I mean, some of them are being arrested across the country. But it's as if, honest to God, it's like January 6th never happened. It's like, on one hand, outlets like the Gateway Pundit and Breitbart can openly state that there was Antifa dressed up as MAGA supporters on January 6th, breaking windows and shoving poles through the glass and stealing things that don't belong to them and 1,000 other things. And they're doing all of that and video footage and all the investigations and everything, but they don't seem to think that it could happen in a situation like this. It happens in these situations more frequently than a January 6th. We've only seen one January 6th, but if you think about it, January 6th was basically what goes on college campuses and went on in the streets of Washington, D.C., and what went on in the streets of 2020 during the summer, in the fake, George Floyd nonsense. It's the same thing. It's only happening now inside of actual college university buildings. I mean, that's straight up vandalism then. Then those people should be arrested. People standing around and chanting something and whatever, walking around in a circle like a zombie, which they all are. They're all NPC zombies. They don't really know what it is that they're doing. But at the exact same time, if laws are being broken, which it's evident at this point that they are, well then yeah, arrest them. Again, in the last episode, I brought up the banners. I brought up the signs. They even all have the same color and same size tents. They didn't all go to the same store and buy the same stuff. Somebody gave it to them. This costs money. This is coordinated. So no, it's not your average university student of Middle Eastern descent who had parents or grandparents in Gaza, and now they're over here studying in the States. Those protests aren't filled with that kid. They're filled with Antifa. They're filled with Jews pretending to be Palestinians. It's in that post. They're openly recruiting for people. But again, you can still see the mind frame of a left-wing university president. We gathered with students and student organizations and we're trying to negotiate and whatever else. Again, we're not talking about a hostage situation here. It's not a hostage situation. It's a university. It's private property. They pay to be there, but they don't pay to vandalize the place. If they're vandalizing the place, you arrest them. If they're standing around holding a sign, that's not a crime. But you don't negotiate with people like this. It says both sides in these discussions put forward robust and thoughtful offers and worked in good faith to reach common ground. We thank them all for their diligent work, long hours, and careful effort, and wish they had reached a different outcome. We urge those in the encampment to voluntarily disperse. We are consulting with a broader group in our community to explore alternative internal options to end this crisis as soon as possible. We will continue to update the community with new developments." Unquote. Okay. Again, you get rid of the Egyptian as president, who do you think's going to get the job? I think we know. They have someone picked out. They have someone lined up. They know exactly who they want to hire. That person's going to be Jewish. Now what you have is a class action lawsuit that has been filed from a handful of Columbia University students against the trustees of Columbia University in the city of New York, a New York corporation. I'm looking at the class action lawsuit brief right here. Again, never forget October 7th. The very first reference point or notation at the bottom is that it says the 7th of October refers to October 7th, 2023, the deadliest day for Jews since the Holocaust, when Hamas, a U.S. designated terrorist organization, invaded the state of Israel, massacred 1,200 Jews, and captured more than 200 civilian hostages. There's zero proof of that. No proof. None. It's just a story. It's just a giant story. And then this entire lawsuit is filled with individuals' first-hand accounts, so to speak. And it's just ridiculous. This whole thing could have been written by one person. I mean, again, there's no proof that any of this is actually real. Here's one of the statements. This is facts specific to Plaintiff CS, which is the individual, again, one of the individuals filing, apparently. It says the following here. This is on page 15. It says, Plaintiff CS is in her second year at Columbia. Plaintiff is an openly Jewish student that experienced numerous instances of harassment and intimidation on campus since October 7th. Though plaintiff was at times uncomfortable on campus, she was generally able to attend classes on campus without issue and, for the most part, felt safe in her educational environment. However, when the encampment was erected on April 18th, the level of hostility on campus escalated dramatically, creating a sense of fear and insecurity for plaintiff. The aggressive protests and intimidating behavior near the encampment made her fearful of harassment and even physical harm. It says they later enrolled online and took their online courses that were offered and blah, 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 blah. Columbia would not provide a safe educational environment. She would not have chosen to enroll or pay tuition to Columbia if she had known previously that this would happen. It's called being an adult. I mean, when you walk around society, do you feel safe? When I pump gas, my head's on a swivel and my hand's on my gun. And I live in a relatively small town. I mean, what gives? Learn how to be an adult. Deal with it. Move with the punches. Avoid the crowds if you can. Is there a back door to the building you're trying to get into? Then go through the back door. Yeah. Online education is the safe haven for all kinds of this nonsense, because we know that this happens in brick and mortar places, whether they be K-12 schools or universities. But they're just now figuring this out. Absolutely wild. Now, speaking of Breitbart, too, I wanted to mention this because this happened last week also. This was on Breitbart. Again, they love Ron DeSantis, without a doubt. They love Israel. They have their own Breitbart Israel outlet, after all. This was titled, Ron DeSantis, Unruly Anti-Jewish Pro-Hamas Protesters Will Be Expelled from Florida Universities. Notice they use Hamas, though. They always say Hamas. They don't say Palestinians, because if they say that, then they're going to find out that many Palestinians are Christians. See, they're slaughtering Christians over there, too. That's kind of the point also. In fact, that's probably the much larger point. Certainly one of the more religious ideological points that's being made over there is they're killing Christians and enjoying it. It says anti-Jewish pro-Hamas protesters, there's Hamas again, such as those seen at Columbia and Yale, will be expelled if they try to pull the same stunts at Florida universities. Ron DeSantis made clear on Thursday, quote, if you think about what happened when you have these Hamas demonstrators out, it says, they're taking over bridges and they're taking over roads, he said, noting that these individuals do not have the right to do that. Well, that's true, they don't. They don't get to disrupt. No one gets to disrupt the average operations of things. But again, expulsion or not, the expulsion is up to the university. It's not up to Ron DeSantis. That's not state government's call to make. I mean, yes, the state government provides the funds for these universities and so on, and we're well aware of that, but ultimately, that's what you pay administrators to decide. So it's their call. And if presidents of universities, and that's really their job too, if they put out a statement that says, look, you can't do this here, I think they did that at the University of Florida. Ben Sass put out some statement, said the same thing, that this isn't a playground and you don't get to do whatever you want and blah, blah, blah. I mean, okay, fine. People get to express themselves lawfully if they want to, but lawful is the key word. Breaking windows, vandalizing, stealing things, a number of other stuff. I mean, yeah, it's a fine line. There's no doubt about it. But painting with a wide brush is astounding. Again, it's just like everybody has amnesia when it comes to January 6th, and they forget what that really was, or they don't want to acknowledge what that really was. It was infiltrators, it was Antifa, it was Ukrainian Jewish agitators, it was 1,000 people. It was the feds, it was CIA, you had every agency there. They were all pretending to be MAGA. They were in there breaking things, stealing things, taking footage, like I said, doing a number of different things, but no one can imagine that such a similar thing could happen in another situation. It happens in all of these situations. It's the same playbook. And who wrote the playbook? Because it's Bolshevistic. It's a Bolshevistic playbook. We know who wrote it. We know who created Bolshevism. Same thing. Okay. Moving on here, you may recall that in the last episode, our Virginia professor friend brought up the subject of anosognosia as being a potentially diagnosable condition having to do with individuals who don't realize that they are ill. Now, if we expand on this a little bit further, they sent me another article which I want to read here quickly. Further defines this condition from the American Psychiatric Association. And again, I think we're talking ultimately about brainwashing. We're talking about individuals who have been brainwashed into believing that the thing that they support is in fact okay and morally sound when in fact it is not. And now we have such varying degrees of brainwashing that the individuals, of course, who are brainwashed don't know that they are. And as I've said before, and you've heard me say it, is that an awake individual who's no longer brainwashed, certainly as best as they could be, I would hope, if you were to ask that individual, are you brainwashed? They would look at you honestly and say the following. They would say, I used to be. I used to be. Because if you think about it, we all used to be to some degree. It's just we're all on varying degrees of how brainwashed we were. How trusting are we of this, that, or the other? How skeptical are we of this, that, or the other? And then what do we do to act upon it, on that skepticism and that lack of trust, in order to arrive at the real answer to the thing that we thought we once knew that we ended up realizing was in fact a lie? So Anosognosia, here's the article. It was from September 7th of 2001, oddly enough. Odd timing, a few days before 9/11. Anosognosia keeps patients from realizing they're ill. It says the following. About half of the people with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder may not be getting the treatment they need because of a brain deficit that renders them unable to perceive that they are ill, according to one expert. Anosognosia, meaning, quote, unawareness of illness, unquote, is a syndrome commonly seen in people with serious mental illness and some neurological disorders, according to Xavier Amador, PhD, who spoke at a 2001 convention of the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill in Washington, D.C. in July. It says people with this syndrome do not believe that they are ill despite evidence to the contrary, said Amador, who is the director of psychology at the New York State Psychiatric Institute and professor of psychology in the Department of Psychiatry at what university? Columbia. Columbia University's College of Physicians and Surgeons. The irony. It says, quote, people will come up with illogical and even bizarre explanations for symptoms and life circumstances stemming from their illness, he said, along with a compulsion to prove to others that they are not ill, despite negative consequences associated with doing so. And then, of course, they used Theodore Kaczynski as the example. He was a brilliant man. He just took it a little overboard when he started sending bombs to particular places and whatever else. But either way, it says Amador's quest to understand the basis of this syndrome lies a little closer to home. It was his experience as a clinician and as a brother of someone with schizophrenia. Amador said that led him to do research on anosognosia, which is not to be confused with denial, he emphasized, although in the beginning he did not make that distinction. Quote, that's what I called it when my brother refused to take his medications, and that is what I called it after his third hospitalization. I found his Haldol in the trash can, said Amador. He said, this is someone who taught me to throw a baseball and ride a bicycle. I really looked up to him and was appalled by what I thought was his immaturity, stubbornness, and defensiveness, rather. He says, but research points to a much more complex problem. Intrigued by a 1986 study by William H. Wilson, MD, and colleagues, that found that 89% of patients with schizophrenia denied having an illness. Amador conducted his own investigation of the issue. Amador and his colleagues found in a 1994 study that nearly 60% of a sample of 221 patients with schizophrenia did not believe they were ill. A frustrating existence, it says. Amador also described what it's like to work with someone who has anosognosia. One patient encountered by Amador had a lesion on the frontal lobe of his brain. He was unaware that he was paralyzed on the left side and that he had problems writing. When asked to draw a clock, the patient thought he did fine, Amador recalled. However, when Amador pointed out to the patient that the numbers were outside of the circle, the patient became upset. Quote, the more I talked to him about the drawing, the more flustered he got. Then he got angry and pushed the paper away, saying, it's not mine, it's not my drawing. Yeah, that would certainly be different than denial. Let's see. It goes on. It says Amador finds the same reaction appears when he talks to people with several mental illnesses, which sometimes involve similar frontal lobe deficits. Instead of being an ally, I end up being an adversary, he said. Kind of sounds familiar, though, doesn't it? Regarding the behavior of the individuals that we've encountered, whether they be friends, family, or otherwise, over the last 4 years. It's basically the same kind of behavior. But I think this really is brainwashing. It's a lack of understanding that individuals have been brainwashed, and that mass formation psychosis, if you want to even call it that, and all the other phrases and names that have been used to describe it, that it's very difficult for people to come to grips with the fact that they've been brainwashed, that right there is one of the more root problems. It's not so much that they don't want to hear the truth. It's that they don't want their lie to be exposed as being a lie, but also that they don't want to be exposed as having fallen for numerous lies and the weight of all of those lies. And of course, under that lying is a purposeful brainwashing that's been going on for a very, very long time. Anyway, this article continues. It says, don't expect them to comply with any treatment plan because they don't believe they are ill, noted Amador. It's important to develop a partnership with the patient around those things that can be agreed upon. Amador said that family members and clinicians should first listen to the patient's fears, such as being placed in a hospital against his or her will. Empathy with the patient's frustration and even delusional beliefs is also important, remarked Amador, who said that the phrase, I understand how you feel, quote unquote, can make a world of difference. The most difficult thing for family members to do is building a trusting relationship, he said. In building a trusting relationship, is to restrict discussion to the problem or problems that the person with mental illness perceives as problems. Quote, you might see the hallucinations or delusions as the big problem, says Amador. Quote, your loved one, however, may be complaining about not getting to sleep at night. That is the problem you should be discussing. Perhaps a patient will only take his or her medication to get family members and clinicians to quit bothering them, and this is sometimes enough, Amador said. Quote, you have to find out what motivates them to take their medications, then reflect that reason back and highlight the perceived benefit. Unquote. Yeah, I agree with that, certainly to a degree. And if you just take brainwashing in itself, and again, the mass formation psychosis that we've experienced in the matrix that we were born into, if you can explain all of that to an individual and then show them, you have to show them things. But as we know, that's not, that's easier said than done. You send something to someone and then they shout back at you that they don't want to see it, or that they don't want to watch it, or they don't want to learn more. Because ultimately what's happening is you're slowly chipping away with the truth. As your hammer, you're slowly chipping away at the lies and the brainwashing that they've been subjected to and believe this entire time. Some of us took that initiative ourselves by wanting to look into subjects ourselves individually and then wanting to tell other people. And then we would listen to other people talk about new subjects, and then we would say, well, that's a subject I haven't looked into yet. And then you would dive into that and learn more about that, and so on and so on and so on. But then there's a group of individuals that just refuse to move. So, yeah, it's certainly denial. There's no doubt about that. That's certainly a branch on the tree. I just think that the brainwashing aspect of this and the matrix as the whole is the much larger issue. And getting them to understand that they were born into that is the big problem. In fact, I played this audio from a guy who has, I don't know, a TikTok show or something like that, but it was a neat little audio clip of him, a video clip, and it was in the war video, one of the last war videos. And he openly said, "Isn't it interesting how individuals will watch a fictitious movie, and yet almost everybody, regardless of their political persuasion, their age, their experience, they almost always side with the resistance, the rebellion, the good people in the movie. And you can immediately figure out who the bad people are. And the vast majority do not associate with the bad people. They don't associate with the conformists. They don't associate with the ants marching, or the suit wearing brick and mortar individuals who all say the same thing and do the same thing. They don't associate with them. They don't associate with the Darth Vaders, quote unquote. They associate with the Han Solos. They associate with the Neos from the Matrix. And yet, when it's reality, they can't figure out who's who. And they don't even want to think about it. Because it's easier to mindlessly figure out the difference between a Superman and a Lex Luthor than it is to figure out that the left-right political paradigm is a lie. And that if you're an elected official, you're most likely blackmailed. And you're hooked into the lobby that controls all of the money and the funding. And if they don't like what you say, then you disappear. You either don't run again, they kill you, you get run off the road, whatever it may be. But they don't want to think about that level of evil that exists in our real world. But they can easily point it out if it's in a movie. That really, again, that too is part of the brainwashing. That's the transhumanism. That's part of it. It's way bigger than that, of course, but that's certainly part of it. Getting them to, again, be plugged into a machine and believe what the machine is telling them, literally and metaphorically, but not getting them to see their own reality and how it actually plays out in the real world. That, yeah, again, no doubt about it. That is anosognosia, I think, without a doubt. You explain that concept to people, they'd say, yeah, I know evil works, or I know that evil doesn't work, but it certainly does work, but it exists in the real world. Yeah, I'm aware of that. I know that. And then they get defensive. And then they get a tone about them. And you say, yes, but I'm explaining to you that it seems to be easier for you to want to discuss it if it's in a fictitious scenario as opposed to a real scenario. So instead of talking about Han Solo shooting Greedo at a bar inside a Tatooine, how about we talk about something that happened just down the road with a biological weapon that was injected under the guise of being a preventative medicine? Then they shit their pants. and they want nothing to do with it. That is anosognosia, no doubt about it. I'm convinced now. Yes, it is denial. Yes, it is brainwashing and mass formation psychosis. But it's more to it. These individuals don't want to believe they've been brainwashed. They don't want to believe that brainwashing has numerous implications for endless other mental illnesses beyond just basic denial. It's way worse than that. Let me give you an example, actually. If you bounce over right now, and I'm going to put this video, I've put it on Gab twice on my Gab page, but I'm going to put at least whatever it is, a 3-4 minute clip of this in the next war video. Bounce over to Renette Sunham's foghornexpress.substack.com, her Substack page, and you've got to watch this 8+ minute video of this guy showing the NORAD 5G towers across the United States all lighting up at the same time and then staying on for 10 to 12 hours while we're sleeping. It's something like, you can see them all light up across the United States at the same time. It starts on the East Coast and it just goes boom all the way across to the West Coast. The states that really aren't impacted are the Dakotas, Montana, and a couple in between. But the entire east of the Mississippi just lights up like a flippin' firecracker. And then all throughout Texas, and then all along the southern states there, and then all of California. It's alarming. These 5G towers are cooking us while we're sleeping. I have no doubt they exist for weather modification. They can either amplify a storm or de-escalate a particular storm potentially. What did the guy say? He said that there's 33 HARP locations across the United States. 33, interesting number. Not an accident. But you watch all of this on quote unquote satellite imagery. It's not a real satellite, but it's sky imagery, and they all it's basically like Doppler radar. And it looks like it's just raining in these areas, but it's not rain. It's all the 5G towers just lighting up like a microwave. And again, and ironically, the time is odd too. Not an accident, I don't think either. They're cooking people from 9:11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 9:11 in the morning through the next day. And then he shows the next day on this map, and it shows all these 5G towers cooking, not for just 10 or 12 hours, but upwards of 13, 14 hours a day. It's some scary stuff. It's a weapon. Again, every single time I hear about 5G towers lighting up, and I immediately think of the jabbed. That's one of the first places I go. Again, the graphene oxide, the nanotechnology, and the impact that the 5G towers are openly having on these individuals. And then you take into account that map and the timing of those towers getting clicked onto 11 and then all firing at the exact same time while people are sleeping. And then you combine that with the number of individuals that you're hearing are dying in their sleep. Now, yes, I know that the average American sleeps for roughly 6 to 8 hours a night, if not longer than that. It would certainly make sense, again, just given the basic math and fractioning it out, that the odds, of course, of them passing away in their sleep, they would certainly have over a 33% chance of that being the case. But even so, when you add in the 5G and that being turned on at night, and it potentially, as we know for a fact, impacting the jabbed more often than those who are not jabbed. Yeah, there's a correlation there. No doubt about it. And every single time I hear those two things, I think of the finance director in the town where I live. Him being at least double or triple jabbed, middle of the day, walking uptown during his lunch break, sits on a park bench, very close to a brand new 20-foot 5G tower that went up in the dead of night, and he falls over flat on his face of a heart attack. Dead. There's a correlation there. There has to be. Now, speaking of that, this was, again, good news, ironic, because it's what happens after this that's going to be the tell. This is going to be the dead giveaway. Just the other day, we had the Arizona Republican Party declare that COVID-19 is a biological and technological weapon. And then they passed a ban the jab resolution, quote unquote. It says the resolution declares that COVID-19 injections to be biological and technological weapons and calls for the governor to prohibit their distribution and the attorney general to confiscate the vials and conduct a forensic analysis of their contents. Now, do you think for a minute that Katie Hobbs is going to do that? And that their attorney general is going to do that? No. And again, unfortunately, this isn't happening at the county level where it should happen. And it's not sheriffs doing this, which is where it should be happening nationwide. It's just Republican parties doing this. It says here there are 10 in the state of Florida alone. Again, it's not sheriff's departments doing this. But there are 10 in the state of Florida that have passed a ban the jab resolution, again, declaring COVID-19 injections a biological and technological weapon, and then calling for governors and the attorney general to get rid of them. So it's a political party standing up and saying, look, we've come together as a collective, this can't exist. But again, how many sheriffs are paying attention to this? I thought they were the so-called last line of defense. I thought that, the whole business of see something, say something mattered. What happened to that tagline and that entire slogan? Well, I see a biological weapon in the county where I live. I've said something in writing with both legal documents and medical proof and medical publications to the sheriff in my county Have I heard back? Have I gotten an email? Is my phone ringing? Nope, not a thing. Well, it's an election year, Sean, and that's just kind of the way that it goes in election years. Look, elections got nothing to do with people dying on a constant basis here, under the guise of something clearly that is not a preventative medicine for something that doesn't exist. It can't get any clearer, but you also can't have sheriffs just blindly ignore this. Ultimately, sheriffs, if they are the last line of defense, so they say, which they're not, it's us, which is why we're the ones informing sheriffs. I mean, Jesus. Shouldn't that prove right there that we are the last lines of defense because we're more knowledgeable than sheriffs are? It's the sheriffs that are supposed to do the confiscating and the arresting. They're the ones supposed to be walking into these hospitals and shutting them down of these shots. That's what they're supposed to be doing. We have ample evidence here. We're confiscating these. We have a warrant from a singular judge. It can only be, it doesn't have to be every judge, just a judge. And then bam. Just like that, the shots are confiscated. They're tested. You can no longer use them. Here's your order. This openly says you can no longer use them. If your hospital conglomerate doesn't like what we're doing, have them contact us. We'll give them the documentation as well. And then you go about your business. But I'm telling you, this isn't happening yet. These hospitals aren't being raided by law enforcement or the National Guard or anything. Because remember, it was the National Guard that delivered these shots also. Kind of a big hiccup in the middle of all of this, I think. In fact, instead of doing the right thing, the cover-up and the evil propaganda specifically is always underway. Here's the last story I'll bring up for this episode. This is from WTOL. It was .com rather. It was titled "Governor Whitmer, Michigan, signs bill requiring cardiac emergency response plans in schools into law." Now, why would that be? Seems rather strange, doesn't it? What do we need this for? House Bills 5527 and 5528 will go into effect for the 2025-26 school year and also add a training requirement for school athletic coaches. There's some audio that goes along with this, and for some reason, Damar Hamlin is there. Yes, that's right, that Damar Hamlin. The one who's been relegated to the special teams of the Buffalo Bills if he even plays anymore. Because he's at least triple jabbed and died on the field and then miraculously survived, allegedly. Give this audio a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Governor Gretchen Whitmer discussing new legislation aimed at preventing tragedy in high school sports. The new laws would require schools across the state to develop emergency plans that will include a cardiac emergency response team. High school coaches will need to be certified in CPR and also the use of an AED. Buffalo Bills player Damar Hamlin joined Governor Whitmer for the announcement. He, of course, suffered a cardiac emergency on the field back in 2022.
It all matters, and no one knows when it's going to be their time to save a life. So, just coming out here and learning how to perform CPR and knowing how to use an AED is the first step in that.
Hamlin's organization, Chasing M's Foundation, along with the NFL, they are pledging to donate 60 AEDs to 50 Michigan high schools.
You can see it now, can't you? A double or triple jab student or even a staff member falls over in the middle of a day. They grab one of those defibrillators. They shock them back. Oh, look, they have a pulse again, and it saved their life. And then they say, see, we were on the preventative side of things. We're the heroes. If it wasn't for government, they'd be dead. It's disgusting. This whole thing is just beyond disgusting. If you can't see how obvious this is, that they know exactly what's going on, they're talking about this behind closed doors, they're panicking, and then they get in front of cameras and they smile and they hug and they shake hands and they hold an event for the cameras, and then they do whatever it is that they do to make it look like they're being proactive instead of reactive. This is government in a nutshell. They create the problem, they're told a problem is coming, they're told exactly what it is, or they're gaslit into believing what it is. They hand it out to the public like it's going to be a good thing. Any handout from government is never a good thing. I'm talking about the shots, of course. And then people take them, and now everybody's experiencing the repercussions of what comes with that. It's beyond gross, but it never ends, ladies and gentlemen. It just doesn't stop. Okay. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I will catch you on Friday. Thank you again for listening. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.